This is not particularly a sequel, okay? But there's another part to the story of Ijakwa, one of the many stories we tell in West Africa, specifically in Yoruba land, about the adventures of this trickster. Um, and just so I contextualize this, all these stories tell about the animal kingdom, about their vocations, their gestures, their practices. Rarely do human beings come into these stories. And these were the rich treasures that were given me as a child. This particular story is connected to the story that I've just told about Ijakwa learning that he's not all wise. Um, and the context of this particular story is a famine. Now, in the animal kingdom, there was such a time when there was hunger in the land. No one could eat. Everyone was hungry. And people were dying. Animals were dying. But still, despite the famine in the land, there was this insistence that everyone who has any kind of food whatsoever ought to open their doors to the stranger. So you never eat alone. This is a Yoruba practice. The Yoruba people have a saying, Ewa jeun. So when you enter a house, you don't just go and start eating yourself. You invite the visitor to eat. You say, Ewa jeun, Ewa jeun. It's like, come and eat with me. And this was a practice, a ritual in the animal kingdom as well. One day, the tortoise invited, was going around looking for food, and he met the spider about to dig in into his feast in his house. The law of the jungle is you never eat alone. So when he knocked on the door and the spider opened the door, he was so disappointed to see Ijakwa the tortoise. He was like, oh, not you again. But he invited him into his house. And the spider, who is also a trickster, decided to play a trick on the tortoise. So he put the washing bowl far away from the dining table. And he told the tortoise to go wash his hands. He said, my brother, you know, it is the law of the jungle you have to eat with me. But it is also the law of the jungle that you do not come to the table without washing your hands. And so he asked the tortoise to go wash his hands. The tortoise sludged his way to the water, washed his hands, but used the same limbs to walk back to the table. And by the time he got back to the table, his hands were dirty again. And Spider was like, this won't do, brother. You have to go back and wash your hands. Meanwhile, he's rushing all the food. He's eating everything he can to finish the food. Tortoise, innocent as he was, goes back, washes his hands, comes back, and the food is gone. And the spider offers his regrets. He said, I'm so sorry, brother. I couldn't wait. There's no more food, but you took all that time to wash your hands. Tortoise says, okay, you know, Spider, I would like to invite you to my own meal. Would you like to come next week and eat with me? And Spider is like, definitely, I'm in. Just give me the date. Send a WhatsApp message to me and I'll be there. So the tortoise has a plan, revenge. He goes into the water and somehow manages to gather some scraps together that he names as food. The spider comes all the way to him, and the spider now has to go into the water. He has to sink into the depths of the water to eat alongside the tortoise. But the spider is so distributed that it's very difficult for him to sink. And so the tortoise calls upon him and says, come down here, the water is fine. Let's start eating. The spider is doing all he can to sink, but he cannot get in there. So he ties to himself stones and tries to sink. But by the time he sinks right down in there, the food is gone. And the spider is like, touche, you got back. Nice. And I'm not sure why our elders told us this story. But when I think about these stories and teach them in the classroom and speak to people about them, This particular one tells me about the space of hospitality, right? Hospitality or accommodation, in my theory making work and philosophy, is all the ways the world is making us welcome. I'm of the opinion that hospitality is shrinking, that all the ways that modernity has held our bodies is no longer possible, that we are losing our space in the world. The world is kicking us out, so to speak. All the ways we've built highways and built telecommunication devices to be in touch with each other, all the social algorithms, our public technologies of justice, they are shrinking and they're losing their buoyancy. It's as if we're losing our way on a planet that can no longer host us. What do you do when you're no longer welcome? Is my question. And I think is the question of that story. What do we do when we're no longer welcome on a planet that we've made home for a long time? The question for me has more than an answer. It's an invitation to experiment with embodiment, right? That this is the time not so much about forcing our way into things, which is what modernity would prescribe. This is the time for us to shapeshift. This is not about solutions any longer. Solutions carry the logic of the problems they're trying to solve. We need other ways of being welcome in the planet, and that means listening to a planet that is alive. That means bending our ears to the ground. The Yoruba people have a technology they call dobale. Dobale means prostrating yourself. We have a saying that when Shango passes in the wind and in fire, the thing to do is not to throw stones at it. The thing to do is to dobale, is to prostrate oneself. I think it's time we all collectively dobaled. It's time we prostrated ourselves to the ground to learn to listen again, to learn to sing together again, to tell stories that have not yet been told, to play with our children and let them lead us into new ways of being in the world. It's almost like an autistic politics. My son is autistic, and he's 7 years old. I will tell this little bit of an addendum of a story to add to the story that I've just told. I was in Massachusetts with him several months ago, and it was 11 p.m. I was doing the dishes. Doing the dishes is one of my favorite times of the day because it allows me to think. Dishes and having a shower are my best philosophical moments. I was doing the dishes and I could not get my son to go to sleep. His sister was already asleep, but he was walking around in circles. He just kept on going around in circles around me, just going around in circles. And I felt this intergenerational desire to tell him to keep quiet and go to bed because he was beginning to get on my nerves, okay, much to my embarrassment. Um, because my parents told me to sit down. It's something parents often do. Just, could you just sit down and give me peace? You might know of this technology. Um, but as that urge came up to tell him to sit down, somewhere around my throat, it transmutated into a question instead of an instruction. And so I turned to my son, and instead of telling him to sit down, I asked him a question. I said, Kea, could you tell me why you keep going around in a circle? Why is it important for you to go around in a circle? Now, I'm a clinical psychologist. I did not need that answer from him. I understand autism to an extent. But it was better that I asked a question than to give an instruction. And my son, without losing a step, without missing a heartbeat, just keeps on going around in a circle, looks at me, smiles a bit, and says, Dada, there are things I have to do that you know nothing about. There are things I have to do that you know nothing about. And I think that when my first story about enchantment and this story about losing hospitality, There are things we have to do collectively as a species that modernity knows nothing about. We have to lose our way together. The Yoruba people say, in order to find your way, you must lose it. Maybe losing our way looks like going around in a circle. Maybe it looks like doing things that does not make sense to Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and the techno-bureaucratic empires that enforce a solutionism that is no longer working. Maybe that is what an autistic politics looks like. Losing our way, walking around in a circle, and remembering that enchantment is not in short supply, that even in times of losing hospitality, there are things to do that we know nothing about yet. Ta-da!